All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are absolutely jumping headfirst into a really captivating anthology. It's essentially a profound cultural mirror, one that reveals the deep spiritual legacy of the Vietnamese people. We're talking about a collection of classic folktales passed down through generations, stories that have literally shaped the beliefs, the morals, and the everyday life of an entire nation. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The author and translator of this collection, Bao Khang, just perfectly captures the weight of these stories right in the foreword. I mean, these are definitely not your simple, everyday bedtime stories. They really do form an invaluable spiritual legacy. Khang translated these specific tales into English with a very clear mission in mind: to share the beauty, the charm, and those core fundamental values of Vietnamese culture with the rest of the world. And she did it while carefully preserving their original meaning, which is huge.
Now, the anthology contains exactly 16 rich, deeply detailed stories. And let's be real, summarizing 16 sprawling epics, origin myths, and moral fables all in one go, that is quite a challenge. So to make this rich mythology highly digestible for us today, and to really grasp what these stories are trying to tell us at their core, we're going to structure this explainer by looking at the major themes that unite them all.
To do that, we'll just walk through three thematic pillars. First up, explaining the natural world. Second, the law of karma. And finally, number 3, love, loyalty, and betrayal. This structured approach is going to make all of this super easy to follow. Starting right off with part 1, explaining the natural world, origins, and myths. So way before modern science, ancient people used this kind of vibrant, larger-than-life storytelling to make sense of weather patterns, changing landscapes, basically the whole world around them. And this brilliantly illustrates that idea. Take the epic showdown between two powerful deities who were competing for the hand of a beautiful princess. You've got Sernteen, the mountain god, who wins her hand by arriving first with these magnificent gifts. Well, Thuyten, the water god, is absolutely furious. He summons violent floods and dark clouds to attack. But the mountain god, he simply raises the hills higher and higher to block the water. The stories explain that the water god never forgot this defeat. And this endless epic battle, that is the mythological origin of Vietnam's yearly monsoon floods and storms. Every single year, the waters rise and the mountains stand firm.
But these origin stories aren't just for the weather. They apply to beloved cultural customs too. Take Ben Chung and Ben Zai, the traditional cakes of the Lunar New Year, or Tet. The story goes that a king challenged his sons to bring him the most meaningful food, and whoever did would inherit the throne. Now, while the older princes were out hunting for exotic treasures, the youngest, Prince Tiet Lu, created these simple cakes from everyday ingredients. The square Ben Chung represents the earth, and the round Ben Zai represents the sky. The king actually chose him as the successor, not because of some flashy treasure, but because he recognized the profound meaning of simple rice and the hardworking people who grow it. It's an incredible cultural tradition that lives on in Vietnamese homes to this day. And the anthology is just packed with these fascinating origin myths. Like, why is the sea salty? Well, because it absorbed the countless drops of sweat and tears from poor, oppressed people over the ages. Or how did the rainbow form? The colors of the world were actually arguing over who was the most important, until the rain forced them to join hands in harmony. And my personal favorite, why do horseshoe crabs always travel in closely attached pairs? Because they were once a devoted husband and wife who fell from the sky after clumsily dropping a magical flying pearl into the ocean. It's amazing how deeply human emotions, like suffering, pride, and clumsy devotion, are fundamentally tied to the natural world in these tales. Moving right along to our second pillar, the law of karma, justice and morality. If that first pillar was about how the world was made, this one is strictly about how you behave in it. These stories act as a really strict moral compass, where kindness is rewarded, wickedness is severely punished, and the inescapable law of cause and effect reigns supreme. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly you can see that inescapable law across multiple stories. We have Tum, who is endlessly kind, relies on a magical goby fish in a well and the Buddha for help, and ultimately becomes queen. Meanwhile, her deceitful stepsister Kam and her stepmother face a pretty gruesome end involving boiling water. Then there's Thuc Sign, right? Humble woodcutter who slays a giant python and an eagle to save a princess, uses a magical musical lute to bring peace, and eventually becomes king. His sworn brother, Li Thung, who repeatedly steals credit and betrays him, is ultimately struck dead by lightning. The moral mathematics here are just absolute. But perhaps the most striking example of all this is the tale of the carambola tree. Okay, picture this step by step. We start with two brothers.
The selfish one, Teo, takes the whole inheritance, leaving his brother T with just a tiny hut and a fruit tree. Well, when a giant bird comes and eats the fruit, it actually pays the kind brother T in gold, making him comfortably wealthy. Seeing this, the greedy brother Teo gets jealous and forces a trade to get the tree. When the bird offers him the exact same deal, Teo brings an absurdly massive sack. He stuffs it with so much gold and so many jewels from a magical island that the exhausted bird simply cannot carry the weight through a storm. That visual, the giant, overloaded sack dragging the greedy brothers straight down to the bottom of the raging sea, is an absolutely unforgettable lesson on the destructive nature of greed.
You might be wondering, though, how exactly is all this cosmic justice delivered? Well, it relies on a really rich variety of magical interventions. Whether it's heavenly deities like the Buddha stepping in to help the downtrodden, magical animals like the golden turtle or that giant bird balancing the scales, or magical objects like glowing pearls and enchanted flutes revealing the truth. The core message is crystal clear. The universe is always watching. And trust me, it has plenty of tools to ensure you get exactly what you deserve.
Which brings us to our final thematic pillar, love, loyalty, and betrayal. Beyond the magic and the karma, these stories are deeply rooted in complex and often really tragic human relationships. They explore the absolute limits of devotion. Let's move to Macho and see how this builds into one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in the entire collection, the story of Princess Mijo and Trung Tui. It maps out the devastating cost of lost trust perfectly. The kingdom is protected by an invincible magical crossbow, but the enemy prince, Trung Tui, marries the princess specifically to discover its secret. In the dead of night, he steals the real weapon and leaves a fake. So when the enemy army attacks, the kingdom falls. As the king and the princess flee, she innocently scatters goose feathers so her husband can find her trail. But when the king learns the truth, that the traitor was her husband, he slays his own daughter. Finding her body, Trung Tui is utterly consumed by guilt and drowns himself. It's a devastating look at innocence, manipulation, and broken trust.
But hey, it's not all tragedy. Some of these relationship stories are bizarre, beautiful testaments to devotion. Take the story of Saw Dura. He is born as literally a round coconut shell with no arms or legs. Yet the youngest daughter of a rich landlord sees his kind heart and marries him anyway. He eventually transforms into a handsome scholar. But the real star here is his faithful wife. When her jealous sisters push her into the ocean, she gets swallowed by a giant shark. But because she listened to her husband and kept a survival kit on her, a knife, flint, and 2 eggs, she literally cuts her way out, washes up on an island, makes a fire, and raises the eggs into chickens until she is rescued. It just strongly reinforces the theme that true devotion, coupled with some incredible resourcefulness, will always conquer superficial judgments. And loyalty in this anthology takes incredibly diverse forms. Just to quickly list a few, you have a woman who secretly cares for her leprous first husband, even after remarrying, taking him in as a beggar years later when he miraculously heals. You have a fisherman so poor he has to hide in the sand because he literally has no clothes. He ends up marrying a rebellious princess, leading them to cultivate a magical city that literally flies to heaven to avoid a war. And loyalty even extends to the animal kingdom. A poor young man spends his last coins saving a dog, a cat, and a water snake. In return, the snake gives him a magical pearl. When it's stolen, the dog and cat literally team up with an army of mice to track it down and bring it back. Devotion crosses spouses, social classes, and species. Kindness is always returned. So the crucial point is, this brings us to our conclusion, an invaluable spiritual legacy. When we step back and look at these 16 tales through these 3 pillars, we see far more than just folklore. We are looking at the very soul of a nation, one that reveres nature, demands justice and moral integrity, and truly understands the profound depths of human loyalty and betrayal. Despite being thousands of years old and, filled with giant birds and water gods, the core of these stories is entirely relatable to us. Because human emotions like greed, the desire for justice, the pain of betrayal, and the power of love, those are universal. So, which of these ancient moral lessons or origin myths resonates most with your own life today? Keep that question in mind as you navigate your own daily life. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through Vietnam's cultural mirror. Stay curious and keep learning.